close your eyes and picture prehistory. What do you see? Cavemen, spears, grunts, a short, brutal life of survival in the wilderness? Forget all of that, because according to Yuval Noah Harari, the real life of our ancestors, the hunter-gatherers, wasn't nasty, brutish, and short. It was actually kind of great. Welcome to Chapter 3 of Sapiens, a day in the life of Adam and Eve. This isn't about Adam and Eve from the Bible. It's about the real men and women who lived before cities, before farming, before even the idea of ownership. And here's the wild part. They might have been happier, healthier, and more free than we are today. In this video, we'll explore how hunter-gatherers truly lived, bust common myths, and ask the daring question: was civilization actually a step backward? You're about to see human history in a whole new light. Let's go. Harari takes us back about 30,000 years into the world of Homo sapiens before agriculture. Back then, humans lived in small bands of 20 to 50 people. They didn't own land, hoard goods, or build houses. They moved with the seasons, hunting wild animals and gathering plants, nuts, and fruit. And here's the twist. This wasn't a miserable life. It was balanced, rich, and varied. Contrary to modern assumptions, Harari says most hunter-gatherers probably worked fewer hours than the average modern office worker. They spent maybe 4 to 6 hours a day getting food. The rest of the time, socializing, resting, storytelling, making art, playing with children. They had a diverse diet full of fiber and nutrients, no sugar bombs, no processed food, fewer lifestyle diseases. They knew the land intimately, what plants were edible, which animals were mating when it would rain. Their mental and sensory worlds were highly tuned to nature, not numbed by screens. And because they didn't store food or accumulate possessions, there was little inequality. No kings, no millionaires, no beggars. Just people living together in harmony with their environment. Sounds like paradise, right? Here's something wild. Harari argues that hunter-gatherers were smarter, not in math or coding, of course, but in environmental awareness and practical intelligence. To survive, they needed encyclopedic knowledge of thousands of plants, animals, weather patterns, and landscapes. And they passed this information through oral tradition, stories, and direct experience. Imagine navigating hundreds of square miles of territory without maps, compasses, or GPS. You'd need a photographic memory, spatial reasoning, and deep ecological understanding. By contrast, modern humans outsource memory to books, phones, and the internet. Most of us don't even know which plants in our backyard are edible or deadly. In some ways, civilization made us smarter, but in others, it made us mentally lazy. Harari points out that hunter-gatherers were not primitive. Their brains were just as developed as ours, maybe even more attuned to real-world complexity. They were philosophers, scientists, artists, explorers, and their lives required constant mental engagement, not routine labor or bureaucratic repetition. So where did he get the idea that prehistoric life was horrible? Hollywood mostly. Movies and textbooks taught us that early humans lived in filthy caves, barely surviving, constantly afraid of predators. But Harari dismantles that idea. Caves. They were just one of many shelters, used occasionally, not permanently. Most of the time, people lived outdoors or in makeshift camps, and they weren't always cold, dirty, or starving. Instead, evidence shows that many hunter-gatherer societies were healthier than early farmers. They had stronger bones, fewer cavities, and less disease. Also, the idea that they were constantly violent? That's up for debate. Yes, humans were capable of aggression, but large-scale warfare seems rare before agriculture. There were no standing armies, no mass killings, no genocidal ideologies. Of course, conflict existed. Harari doesn't romanticize the past, but the modern image of brutal cavemen is more fantasy than fact. The truth? Our ancestors lived complex, dynamic lives that we've barely begun to understand. One of the biggest advantages of the hunter-gatherer life, according to Harari, was freedom. These people weren't tied to a house, a job, or a single place. They could pack up and move when food ran low or water dried up. They didn't suffer from overwork, taxes, or land rules. There were no prisons, no armies, no bureaucrats demanding reports. If one band got annoying, you could just leave. And because wealth couldn't really be stored, no one could dominate through material possessions. Power was shared. Elders might be respected, but they didn't rule with an iron fist. This mobility and equality created a kind of social flexibility that we've largely lost. Sure, they lacked modern medicine and technology, but in exchange, they had community, autonomy, and time. That's a powerful trade-off. Harari doesn't say we should go back to that lifestyle, but he does ask us to question the cost of the world we built. Did we trade away too much? It's tempting to romanticize hunter-gatherers as noble, peaceful, wise people. But Harari warns us not to fall into that trap. Yes, they were healthier in some ways, but they were also vulnerable to disease, injury, and infant mortality. A broken leg or snake bite could be fatal. Childbirth was dangerous, and they had no antibiotics or vaccines. Plus, Harari points out that humans likely played a major role in the extinction of large animals, from mammoths in Siberia to giant sloths in the Americas. So no, they weren't environmental saints. They were opportunists, clever, resourceful, and sometimes destructive. The truth is complex. Hunter-gatherers were neither angels nor savages. They were just humans, us in a different world. And understanding them isn't a teach about glorifying the past. It is about seeing clearly where we came from and what we've gained and lost since then. So, what did we learn from Chapter 3? We learned that the first 200,000 years of Homo sapiens were filled with curiosity, movement, connection, and resilience. That life before agriculture might have been more enjoyable and balanced than we ever imagined. And maybe most importantly, we learned that progress isn't always linear. Sometimes the primitive ways of living hold deep wisdom, and sometimes the modern world comes at a high cost: stress, inequality, and disconnection. Yuval Harari doesn't tell us to abandon civilization. He tells us to rethink it, to question the stories we've been told, to look deeper at what it really means to be human. Because maybe Adam and Eve didn't fall from paradise. Maybe they were pushed out by wheat. But that's a story for Chapter 4. Thanks for joining us on this journey through Chapter 3 of Sapiens. If this video made you rethink what it means to live well, drop a like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still thinks cavemen were just grunting brutes. Next up, we're diving into the agricultural revolution, and trust me, it's not the happy farming tale you were taught in school. What do you think? Would you trade modern life for the freedom of a forager? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and let's start a real conversation about what progress actually means. Until next time, remember, history doesn't just explain where we came from, it challenges who we are.